What do you do when the person you trust most becomes the one who destroys everything you hold dear? Imagine this: a respected officer, a dangerous secret, and a murder no one saw coming. This story could be something brought out of a movie, but for this family, it is a disturbing reality. This all started on a particular evening when the quiet of a peaceful suburban neighborhood is disturbed by a frantic 911 call. A young woman, her voice trembling with fear, reports finding her mother's lifeless body in their home. At first, it seems like a tragic accident, but as detectives dig deeper, a darker story begins to emerge, one filled with forbidden relationships, betrayal, and a secret so shocking no one could have predicted it. And at the center of it all is Officer Marcus Johnson, a man everyone trusted. His actions will leave the community in disbelief, forever changing the lives of those who thought they knew him. This is the story of a man who turned everything to ashes, and the tragic consequences of what happens when hidden desires take control. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more shocking stories. Like, comment, and share to help us bring these stories to light. It was one of those cold, quiet evenings when 17-year-old Lisa Davis walked home from her friend's house. The street lights flickered on and off, barely cutting through the dark. The air felt sharper than usual, pushing her to walk faster, like it was urging her to get inside. But even with the chill, something about that night made her uneasy. As she got closer to her house, she noticed something odd. The porch light was off. It was a small thing, but it made her stop in her tracks. Her mum always made sure that light was on, no matter what. Lisa's gut twisted, but she brushed it off. Maybe her mum had just forgotten. It was nothing too serious. She probably forgot, right? She called out to her mum, but there was no response, which was weird, since she expected her mum to be home, as her shift would have ended hours ago. Lisa moved cautiously through the house, her voice growing more desperate as she called out again. "Mom!" When she entered the master bedroom, the sight before her made her freeze. Tamara lay face down on the floor, surrounded by a pool of blood. Her mother's body, so still, felt like the complete opposite of the warmth Lisa had always known. She reached for her phone as it slipped from her trembling hands before she managed to dial 911. Her voice cracked as she spoke to the dispatcher, struggling to describe the horrifying scene. Within a few minutes, the house was flooded with flashing lights and uniformed officers. Lisa was led outside, wrapped in a blanket, her face pale and streaked with tears. Officer Marcus Johnson arrived among the respondents. His demeanor was calm and professional as he took in the scene, moving like a seasoned state trooper who had seen it all. But for just a split second, there was something in his face, something you would not catch unless you were really paying attention. The investigation had started, but no one could have imagined just how tangled Marcus's life would become in the middle of it all. Tamara Davis was a single mother who had worked tirelessly to build a good life for herself and her daughter. As a dedicated officer in the local precinct, everyone admired her for her quick thinking and unwavering dedication to doing what was right. Friends and colleagues described Tamara as the kind of person everyone felt comfortable around, kind, easy to talk to, and always willing to help. But she kept her personal life close to her chest. She was well respected in the community and spent a lot of her free time mentoring young women who wanted to get into law enforcement. Her relationship with her daughter Lisa was her most cherished bond. Tamara often spoke about her dreams for Lisa's future, determined to give her every opportunity to succeed. Now those hopes were gone, and the whole community felt the weight of losing a woman who had touched so many lives. Detective Sarah Mitchell showed up not long after the first responders. She was known for being sharp and thorough, the kind of detective who notices the little things others might miss. The first thing she clocked was that there was no sign of forced entry, and that told her whoever did this was probably someone Tamara knew, someone she let in willingly. As she looked around the room, something about how things were placed did not sit right. It felt off, like someone had tried to make it look a certain way but rushed through it. It was not neat or planned. It was messy, almost desperate. The forensic team got to work, carefully going through the house and gathering evidence. One of the things they found was Tamara's cell phone. Detective Mitchell had a gut feeling it might hold some answers about what happened in her final hours. Outside, Lisa was sitting on the porch, clutching a blanket around her like it was the only thing holding her together. Her hands were shaking, holding onto the edges of the fabric so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Mitchell walked over to her, moving slowly, and crouched down to her level. She looked into her red, swollen eyes, her voice soft but steady. "Lisa," Mitchell began softly, "I know this is incredibly hard, but we need your help to find out what happened to your mum." Lisa gave a small nod, her voice so soft it was almost inaudible as she tried to explain her day. She mentioned the strange feeling she'd had when she first got home, like something was not right. When she was asked if her mum had said anything about trouble or acted differently lately, Lisa paused, unsure how to answer. "She didn't say much, but I know she'd been stressed. She mentioned someone from work she was close to, but she didn't tell me much about it." This caught Mitchell's attention. A close colleague? She made a mental note to dig deeper into Tamara's work relationships. The first significant leads of the case were starting to come together, but the whole story was still out of reach. Back at the station, Mitchell and her partner, Detective James Carter, started going through Tamara's phone records. It did not take long for something to stand out: late-night calls and text messages to the same number over and over again. When they traced it, the number belonged to someone they knew well: Officer Marcus Johnson. Marcus was not just any cop. He was the kind of guy everyone respected. He had a clean record, always did his job by the book, and had this steady, calm way about him that made people trust him. When they brought him in for questioning, Marcus did not even flinch. He kept his cool, saying that he and Tamara had worked together on a few big cases. That was it. Nothing more. According to him, everything between them was strictly professional. "She was a great officer," Marcus said. "We worked closely, but it was nothing more than that." But something about it was off with Mitchell. The way they had been talking, the frequency of their messages. It felt like there was more to the story. She could not let it go, so she decided to dig deeper. She started looking into Marcus's recent movements and his financial records, hoping to find some answers. The image of Marcus Johnson as the hard-working, upright cop was starting to fall apart, and the detectives were set on finding out what he was really hiding. Surveillance footage showed Marcus had been to Tamara's house a few times, mostly late at night. Neighbors even remembered seeing him there just a week before she died. When investigators looked at Marcus's bank records, they found large cash withdrawals, lots of money being taken out with no clear reason. Tamara's closest friends said she had talked to them about a relationship she had been having with someone at work. She had seemed worried about it, and had even mentioned wanting to put an end to it. As the pieces started to come together, the image of Marcus Johnson as a reliable officer started to crack. Detectives were now more determined than ever to figure out what really happened. Mitchell and Carter started putting the pieces together, and their doubts about Marcus grew stronger. The more they dug, the clearer it became. It was not just a professional relationship between him and Tamara. It was something much more. The tangled mess of secrets surrounding Marcus and Tamara was starting to fall apart, and the weight of it all was becoming impossible to ignore. The detectives were not going to stop until they figured out what really happened. Are you captivated by this unfolding story? Don't forget to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe for more gripping tales like this one. As the detectives dug deeper, the pieces of the puzzle slowly started to fall into place, and the events of what actually happened that night was gradually being reconstructed. It all started with a phone call. Tamara had reached out to Marcus, asking to meet. She had finally made up her mind. She wanted to end things with him, close that chapter, and move on with her life. She was done with the affair and wanted to focus on her daughter, her career, everything that mattered. Marcus showed up at her house that evening, but things did not go as planned. The conversation quickly turned tense. Tamara was serious. She was not changing her mind. She told Marcus it was over for good. But as the words left her mouth, she dropped a bombshell. She threatened to expose their affair if he did not back off and leave her alone. The tension in the room was thick, and it was clear the situation was getting out of hand. In a moment of panic and desperation, Marcus drew his service weapon and fired. The single shot was fatal. Realizing what he had done, Marcus tried to cover his tracks. He staged the scene to look like a robbery, scattering items around the room and wiping down surfaces. Once he had done what he could, he ran out the door, into the night, with his heart racing. But no matter how hard he tried to hide the truth, it was already slipping out. When the detectives laid out the evidence in front of Marcus, everything he had worked so hard to keep under control started to unravel. The surveillance footage, the bank records, and the forensic details were too much to ignore. With the walls closing in, Marcus finally broke under pressure. He confessed. He admitted to the affair and the heated argument with Tamara that spiraled out of control. But he was quick to say the shooting wasn't supposed to happen. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "I was scared. I just wanted her to stop." His words hit everyone in the room like a punch. The officer who had always been the one to keep things together, the one everyone trusted, had turned into something no one could recognize. It was not just a case anymore. It was a betrayal of everything he had stood for. And now, the very man who was supposed to protect the community had become the one they needed protection from. The man once seen as a protector of justice was now at the center of a case that had shaken everyone who knew him. The trial of Marcus Johnson quickly became a national spectacle. The media practically camped outside the courthouse, scrambling to catch every detail of the case that had everyone talking. The prosecution painted a damning picture of Marcus. They claimed his secret affair had spiraled out of control, pushing him to the edge when his double life was exposed. The evidence they presented was hard to ignore. Surveillance footage showing Marcus visiting Tamara's home, phone records that revealed constant communication between the two, and forensic evidence that directly linked him to the crime scene. Witnesses took the stand, each one adding to the mounting pressure on Marcus. Neighbors testified about seeing him and Tamara in tense, heated moments. Tamara's close friends spoke about the growing fear she had been carrying in the days leading up to her death, fear about her relationship with her colleague at work. The defense painted a different picture. They argued that Marcus was a man overwhelmed by emotions, caught in a situation he had not intended to escalate. His lawyers described the shooting as an accident, the result of a heated argument gone terribly wrong, but the jury was not moved. After weeks of hearing testimony and hours spent debating, the decision was made: guilty of first-degree murder. Marcus was sentenced to life in prison without the chance for parole. It was hard to ignore the cruel irony. Here was a man who had built his entire life on upholding the law, yet he had brought about his own downfall. As the sentence was handed down, the courtroom fell completely silent, the weight of it all sinking in. It was a sharp reminder of just how quickly one wrong choice could shatter everything. Beyond Tamara Davis's death left a void that was not easy to fill. In the days that followed, friends and neighbors came together to remember her. They shared stories of the kind woman they had known, someone who had always been there, offering a hand or a kind word when it was needed most. Her life had made a difference in ways that most people never even realized, and even though she was gone, the impact she left behind would never fade. Lisa found herself navigating a world without her mum, a reality she never thought she would ever have to face. Tamara's death had left a hole in the community that could not be filled, but the people who had known Tamara stepped in to support Lisa. They gave her the same love and care her mum had always shown to others. Even though everything in her world had been torn apart, Lisa stood tall, determined to carry on her mum's legacy of strength and kindness. As the justice system did its part, holding Marcus responsible for his actions, the emotional scars ran deeper for those who had been close to Tamara. Her co-workers, especially those in law enforcement, struggled to come to terms with the betrayal. A trusted officer, someone they had known and relied on, had turned into a killer. The fact that he had been so close to Tamara only made the wound worse. It was the kind of hurt that would take time to heal. Tamara's murder shook more than just her community. It sent shockwaves across the country. News outlets picked up the story, and soon it became national. The wider law enforcement community was left trying to process what had happened. A betrayal like this, within their own ranks, was something no one could have imagined. People started to question the trust they had placed in officers like Marcus. How many others might be hiding things they should not? Tamara's death opened up a bigger conversation about the relationships between the police and the people they swore to protect. It made everyone reconsider what loyalty and ethics really meant, and why transparency was so important. The affair that started in secret had quickly spiraled into a public scandal, leaving behind a trail of destruction that no one could have predicted. Officer Marcus Johnson, once admired as a model officer, now found himself at the center of a storm that would ruin him. Driven by desire, guilt, and fear, his choices set off a chain of events that could never be undone. It was a harsh wake-up call for everyone, a reminder that personal mistakes don't just affect the people directly involved, they can rip through entire communities, leaving nothing untouched. And that decisions made in haste in emotional situations can often have irreversible consequences. The story of Marcus Johnson and the tragic death of Tamara Davis is one that's impossible to forget for those who were caught in its wake. It's about love, betrayal, and the cost of deception. And at the heart of it all, it's a stark reminder that even the people we trust most, the ones who are supposed to protect us, are just as vulnerable to the flaws and impulses that shape human behavior. For Lisa Davis, the road ahead is unclear, but she's shown incredible strength. In the face of unimaginable loss, she's found a way to keep moving forward. Her mother's death will never fade from her heart, but Lisa is determined to live in a way that honors the woman who raised her, the one who made her who she is today. Thanks for following this painful story with us. We hope it's given you a deeper look into the complexities of betrayal, the lasting consequences of hidden desires, and the impact on those left behind. If you found this story meaningful, please like, share, and subscribe for more true crime stories that dive into the darker side of human nature. And as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts.